The Social Basis of the Woman Question by Alexandra Kollontai, dated 1909. Marriage and the Problem of the Family. Let us turn our attention to another aspect of the woman question, the question of the family. The importance that the solution of this urgent and complex question has for the genuine emancipation of women is well known. The struggle for political rights, for the right to receive doctorates and other academic degrees, and for equal pay for equal work, is not the full sum of the fight for equality. To become really free woman has to throw off the heavy chains of the current forms of family, which are outmoded and oppressive. For women, the solution of the family question is no less important than the achievement of political equality and economic independence. In the family of today, the structure of which is confirmed by custom and law, woman is oppressed not only as a person, but as wife and mother in most of the countries of the civilized world. The civil code places woman in a greater or lesser dependence on her husband, and awards the husband not only the right to dispose of her property, but also the right of moral and physical dominance over her. When the official and legal servitude of women ends, the force we call public opinion begins. This public opinion is created and supported by the bourgeoisie with the aim of preserving the secret institution of property. The hypocrisy of double morality is another weapon. Bourgeois society crushes women with its savage economic vice, paying for her labor at a very low rate. The woman is deprived of the citizen's right to raise her voice in the defense of her interests. Instead, she is given only the gracious alternative of the bondage of marriage or the embraces of prostitution, a trade despised and persecuted in public but encouraged and supported in secret. It is necessary to emphasize the dark sides of contemporary married life and the sufferings women experience in connection with their position in the present family structure. So much has already been written and said on this subject. Literature is full of depressing pictures of the snares of married and family life. How many psychological dramas are enacted? How many lives are crippled? Here, it is only important for us to note that the modern family structure, to a lesser or greater extent, oppresses women of all classes and all layers of the population. Customs and traditions persecute the young mother, whatever the stratum of the population to which she belongs. The laws place bourgeois women, proletarian women, and peasant women all under the guardianship of their husbands. Have we not discovered at last that aspect of the women question over which women of all classes can unite? Can they not struggle jointly against the conditions oppressing them? Is it not possible that the grief and suffering which women share in this instance will soften the claws of class antagonism and provide common aspirations and common action for the women of the different camps? Might it not be that on the basis of common desires and aims, cooperation between the bourgeois woman and the proletarian woman may become a possibility? The feminists are struggling for freer forms of marriage, and for the right to maternity. They are raising their voices in defense of the prostitute, the human being persecuted by all. See how rich feminist literature is in search for new forms of relationships and enthusiastic demands for the moral equality of the sexes. Is it not true that while in the sphere of economic liberation the bourgeois women lag behind the many million strong army of proletarian women who are pioneering the way for the new women? In the fight for the solution of the family question, the laurels go to the feminists. Here in Russia, women of the middle bourgeoisie, that army of independent wage earners thrown onto the labor market during the 1860s, have long settled in practice many of the confused aspects of the marriage question. They have courageously replaced the consolidated family of the traditional church marriage with the more elastic types of relationship that meet the needs of the social later. But the subjective solution of this question by individual women do not change the situation and does not relieve the overall gloomy picture of family life. If any force is destroying the modern form of the family, it is not the titanic efforts of separate and stronger individuals, but the inanimate and mighty forces of production which are uncompromisingly budding life on new foundations. The heroic struggle of individual young women of the bourgeois world who fling down the gauntlet and demand of society the right to dare to love, without orders and without chains, ought to serve as an example for all women languishing in family chains. This is what is preached by the more emancipated feminists abroad and our progressive equal writers at home. The marriage question, in other words, is solved, in their view, without reference to the external situation. It is solved independently of changes in the economic structure of society. The isolated, heroic efforts of individuals is enough. Let a woman simply dare, and the problem of marriage is solved. But less heroic women shake their heads in distress. Is it all very well for the heroines of novels blessed by the prudent offer, with great independence, unselfish friends, and extraordinary qualities of charm, to throw down the gauntlet? But what about those who have no capital, insufficient wages, no friends, and little charm? And the question of maternity preys on the mind of the woman who strives for freedom. Is free love possible? Can it be realized as a common phenomenon, as the generally accepted norm rather than the individual exception, given the economic structure of our society? Is it possible to ignore the elements of private property in contemporary marriage? Is it possible, in an individualistic world, to ignore the formal marriage contract without damaging the interests of women? For the marital contract is the only guarantee that all difficulties of maternity will not fall on the woman alone. Will not that which once happened to the male worker now happen to the woman? The removal of guild regulations, without the establishment of new rules governing the conduct of the masters, gave capital absolute power over the workers. The tempting slogan, freedom of contract for labor and capital, becomes a means for the naked exploitation of labor by capital. Free love, introduced consistently into contemporary class society, instead of freeing women from the hardships of family life, would surely shoulder her with a new burden, the task of caring alone and unaided for her children. Only a whole number of fundamental reforms in the sphere of social relations, reforms transposing obligations from the family to society and the state, could create a situation where the principle of free love might to some extent be fulfilled. But can we seriously expect a modern class state, however democratic it may be, to take upon itself the duties towards women, mothers, and children, which at present are undertaken by that individualistic unit, the modern family? Only the fundamental transformation of all productive relations can create the social prerequisites to protect women from the negative aspects of free love formula. Are we not aware of the depravity and abnormalities that in present conditions are anxious to pass themselves off under this convenient label? Consider all those gentlemen owning and administering industrial enterprises who force women among their workforce and clerical staff to satisfy their sexual whims, using the threat of dismissal to achieve their ends. Are they not, in their own way, practicing free love? All those masters of the houses who rape their servants and throw them out pregnant on the street, are they not adhering to the formula of free love? But we are not talking of that kind of freedom, object the advocates of free marriage. On the contrary, we demand the acceptance of a single morality equally binding for both sexes. We oppose the sexual license that is current, and view as moral only the free union that is based on true love. But my dear friends, do you not think that your ideal of free marriage, when practiced in the conditions of present society, might produce results that differ little from the distorted practices of sexual freedom? Only when women are relieved of all those material burdens which at present time create a dual dependence on capital and on the husband, can the principle of free love be implemented without bringing new grief for women in its wake. As women go out to work and achieve economic independence, certain possibilities for free love appear, particularly for the better paid women of the intelligentsia. But the dependence of women on capital remains, and this dependence increases as more and more proletarian women sell their labor power. Is the slogan free love capable of improving the sad existence of these women, who earn only just enough to keep themselves alive? And anyway, is not free love already practiced among the working classes and practiced so widely that the bourgeoisie has on more than one occasion raised the alarm and campaigned against the depravity and immorality of the proletariat? It should be noted that when the feminists enthuse about the new forms of cohabitation outside marriage that should be considered by the emancipated bourgeois woman, they speak of free love, but when the working class is under discussion, these relationships are scornfully referred to as disorderly sexual intercourse. This sums up their attitude. But for proletarian women at the present time, all relationships, whether sanctified by the church or not, are equally harsh in their consequences. The crux of the family and marriage problem lies for the proletarian wife and mother not in the question of the sacred or secular external form, but in the attendant social and economic conditions which define the complicated obligations of the working class woman, of course it matters to her too whether her husband has the right to dispose of her earnings, whether he has the right by law to force her to live with him when she does not want to, whether the husband can forcibly take her children away, etc. However, it is not such paragraphs of the civic code that determine the position of women in the family, nor is it these paragraphs which make for the confusion and complexity of the family problem. The question of relationships would cease to be such a painful one for the majority of women only if society relieved women of all those petty household cares, which are at present unavoidable, given the existence of individuals scattered in domestic economies, took over responsibility for the younger generation, protected maternity, and gave the mother to the child for at least the first months after birth. In opposing the legal sacred church marriage contract, the feminists are fighting a fetish. The proletarian women, on the other hand, are waging war against the factors that are behind the modern form of marriage and family. In striving to change fundamentally the conditions of life, they know that they are also helping to reform relations between the sexes. Here we have the main difference between the bourgeois and proletarian approach to the difficult problem of the family. The feminists and the social reformers form from the camp of the bourgeoisie, naively believing in the possibility of creating new forms of family and new types of marital relations against the dismal background of contemporary class society, tie themselves in knots in their search for these reforms. If life itself has not yet produced these forms, it is necessary, they seem to imagine, to think them up whatever the cost. There must, they believe, be modern forms of sexual relationship which are capable of solving the complex family problem under the present social system. The ideologists of the bourgeois world, the journalists, writers, and prominent women fighters for emancipation, one after the other put forward their family panacea, their new family formula. How utopian these marriages formulas sound! How feeble these palliatives, when considered in the light of the gloomy reality of modern family structure. Before these formulas of free relationships and free love can become practice, it is above all necessary that a fundamental reform of all social relationships between people take place. Furthermore, the moral and sexual norms and the whole psychology of humankind would have to undergo a thorough evolution. Is the contemporary person psychologically able to cope with free love? What about the jealousy that eats into the best human souls, and that deeply rooted sense of property that demands the possession not only of the body but also of the soul of another, and the inability to have the proper respect for the individuality of another, the habit of either subordinating oneself to the loved one, or of the subordinating the loved one to oneself, and the bitter and desperate feeling of desertion, of limitless loneliness, which is experienced when the loved ceases to love and leaves. Where can the lonely person who is individualist to the very core of his being find solace? The collective, with its enjoyments and disappointments and aspirations, is the best outlet for the emotional and intellectual energies of the individual. But is modern humanity capable of working with this collective in such a way as to feel the mutually interacting influences? Is the life of the collective really capable, at present, replacing the individual's petty personal joys without the unique, one and only twin soul. Even the socialist, the collectivist, is quite alone in the present antagonistic world. Only in the working class do we catch the pale glimpse of the future, of more harmonious and more social relations between people. The family problem is as complex and many-faceted as life itself. Our social system is incapable of solving it. Other marriage formulas have been put forward. Several progressive women and social figures regard the marriage union only as a method of producing progeny. Marriage in itself, they hold, does not have any special value for women. Motherhood is her purpose, her sacred aim, her task in life. Thanks to such inspired advocates as Ruth Bay and Ellen Kay, the bourgeois ideal that recognizes woman as a female rather than a person has acquired a special halo of progressiveness. Foreign literature has seized upon the slogan put forward by these advanced women with enthusiasm, and even here in Russia in the period before the political storm of 1905, before social values came in for revision, the question of maternity had attracted the attention of the daily press. The slogan, "The right to maternity," cannot help producing lively response in the broadest circles of the female population. Thus, despite the fact that all suggestions of the feminists in this connection were of the utopia variety, the problem was too important and topical not to attract women. The right to maternity is the kind of question that touches not only the women from the bourgeois class, but also, to an even greater extent, proletarian women as well. The right to be a mother, these are the golden words that go straight to any woman's heart and force that heart to beat faster. The right to feed one's own child with one's own milk and tend the first signs of the awakening consciousness. The right to care for its tiny body and to shield its tender soul from the thorns and sufferings from the first steps in life. What mother would not support these demands? It would seem that we have again stumbled on an issue that can serve as a moment of unity between women of different social layers. It would seem that we have found, at last, the bridge uniting women of the two hostile worlds. Let us look closer to discover what the progressive bourgeois women understand by the right to maternity. Then we can see whether, in fact, proletarian women can agree with the solutions to the problem of maternity envisaged by the bourgeois fighters for equal rights. In the eyes of the eager apologists, maternity possesses an almost sacred quality, striving to smash the false prejudices that brand a woman for engaging in a natural activity, for the bearing of a child. Because the activity has not been sanctified by the law, the fighters for the right to maternity have bent that stick in the other direction. For them, maternity has become the aim of a woman's life. Ellen Kay's devotion to the obligations of maternity and the family forces her to give an assurance that the isolated family unit will continue to exist in a society transformed along socialist lines. The only change, as she sees it, will be that all the attendant elements of convenience, or of material gain will be excluded from the marriage union, which will be concluded according to mutual inclinations without rites or formalities. Love and marriage will be truly synonymous, but the isolated family unit is the result of the modern individualistic world, with its rat race, its pressures, its loneliness. The family is a product of the monstrous capitalist system, and yet Kay hopes to bequeath the family to socialist society. Blood and kinship ties at present often serve. Is it true as the only support in life? Is the only refuge in times of hardship and misfortune? But will they be morally and socially necessary in the future? Kay does not answer to this question. She is too loving a regard for the ideal family, the egoistic unit of the middle bourgeoisie to which the devotees of the bourgeois structure of society look with such reverence. But it is not only the talented, erratic Ellen Kay who loses her way in the social contradictions. There is possibly no other question about which socialists themselves are so little in agreement as the question of marriage and unity. Were we to try and organize a survey among socialists, the results would most probably be very curious. Does the family wither away? Or are there grounds for believing the family disorders of the present are only a transitory crisis? Will the present form of the family be preserved in the future society, or will it be buried for the modern capitalist system? These are the questions which might well receive very different answers. With the transfer of educative functions from the family to society, the last tie holding together the modern isolated family will be loosened. The process of disintegration will proceed at an even faster pace. The pale silhouettes of future marital relations will begin to emerge. What can we say about these indistinct silhouettes, hidden as they are by present-day influences? Does one have to repeat that the present compulsory form of marriage will be replaced by the free union of loving individuals? The ideal of free love drawn by hungry imagination of women fighting for their emancipation undoubtedly corresponds to some extent to the norm of relationships between the sexes that society will establish. However, the social influences are so complex and their interactions so diverse that it is impossible to foretell what the relations of the future when the whole system has fundamentally been changed it will be like. But a slowly maturing evolution of relations between the sexes is clear evidence that the ritual marriage and the compulsive isolated family are doomed to disappear. The struggle for political rights. The feminists answer our criticisms by saying, even if the arguments behind our defense of the political rights of women seem to you mistaken, it is the importance of the demand itself which is equally urgent for feminists and for representatives of the working class thereby reduced. Cannot the women of the two social camps, for the sake of their common political aspirations, surmount the barriers of class antagonism that divide them? Surely they are capable of waging a common struggle against the hostile forces that surround them. The division between bourgeois and proletarian is inevitable as far as the other questions are concerned, but in the case of this particular question, the feminists imagine the women of the various social classes have no differences. Feminists keep returning to these arguments with bitterness and bewilderment, seeing their preconceived notions of partisan loyalty in the refusal of the representatives of the working class to join forces with them in the struggle for women's political rights. Is this really the case? Is there a complete identity of political aspirations? Or does antagonism hinder the creation of the indivisible above-class army of women in this instance as in all others? We have to answer this question before we can outline the tactics the proletarian women will employ in winning political rights for their sex. The feminists declare themselves to be on the side of social reform, and some of them even say they're in favor of socialism. In the far distant future, of course, but they are not intending to struggle in the ranks of the working class for the realization of these aims. The best of them believe with a naive sincerity that once the deputies' seats are within their reach, they will be able to cure the social sores which have in their view developed because men, with their inherent egoism, have become masters of the situation. However as good as these intentions of the individual groups of feminists towards the proletariat, whenever the question of class struggle has been posed, they have left the battlefield in a fright. They find they do not wish to interfere in alien causes and prefer to retire to their bourgeois liberalism, which is so comfortably familiar. Now, however much the bourgeois feminists try to repress the true aim of their political desires, however much they assure their young sisters that involvement in political life promises immeasurable benefits for the women of the working class, the bourgeois spirit that pervades the whole feminist movement gives a class coloring even to the demand of equal political rights with men, which would seem to be a general women's demand. Different aims and understandings of political rights are used to create an unbridgeable gulf between bourgeois and proletarian women. This does not contradict the fact that the immediate tasks of the two groups of women coincide to a certain degree for the representatives of all classes which have received access to political strive above all to achieve a review of the civil code, which in every country to a greater or lesser extent discriminates against women. Women press for legal charges that create more favorable conditions for labor for themselves. They stand against the regulations legalizing prostitution, etc. However, the coincidence of these immediate tasks is of a purely formal nature. For class interest determines that the attitude of the two groups to these reforms is sharply contradictory. Class instinct, whatever the feminists say, always shows itself to be more powerful than the noble enthusiasms of above-class politics. So long as the bourgeois women and their younger sisters are equal in their inequality, the former can, with complete sincerity, make great efforts to defend the general interests of women, but once the barrier is down and the bourgeois women have received access to political activity, the recent defenders of the rights of all women become enthusiastic defenders of the privileges of their class, content to leave the younger sisters with no rights at all. Thus, when the feminists talk to working women about the need for a common struggle to realize some general women's principle, women of the working class are naturally distrustful. The Social Basis of the Women Question by Alexandra Kollontai, dated 1909.